Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have something of a special review. This is going to be review number 3000 and we're also within a few days actually of the channel's 8th anniversary, which will be the 31st of July 2021. So yeah, who'd have thought back in 2013 that these days we would be 3000 reviews in and 8 years on. It's just mental, I think, isn't it? Craziness. But yeah, as I always do with these milestone reviews, I want to dedicate it to you guys that have followed the channel over the years and also to my fellow beer tubers. I started this channel basically as a way of documenting all the different beers that I was trying, and you know, it's turned into something pretty special. I think I still love doing these videos. I think it's always great to learn about new places, to meet new people, and of course tasting new beers isn't bad either. So yeah, long may it continue, long may it continue. I've got no intention of stopping, of course, but yeah, I hope that you guys continue to enjoy the videos for many years to come. So whether you have liked, subscribed, shared, sent me some beer, shown me around somewhere that I've been in the world, or just give me some beer recommendations or anything like this, a huge thank you to you from the bottom of my heart. You guys are what really make this channel worthwhile, and I enjoy it. I love you all dearly. It's great. So yeah, for the review itself, I actually had a special idea for review number 3000, but I think we might have to delay this now until review number 4000 or so. Either that, or I will do it as a kind of standalone episode, because it is a very, very cool idea, but I would have to be in Scotland to make that happen, and unfortunately because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic, that idea has to go on the shelf for the moment. But it will happen, trust me on that, it will happen, and the beer will last. So I need to decide exactly when to do that, but you know, you will have an interesting episode coming up when that video comes to fruition. But instead, fear not, we have a very good beer to review today, and one that I have to say I'm very, very curious about. So for this review then, we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again. We're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before, and I guess you could describe this brewery as the sort of OG Dutch craft brewery, and this is a beer that I think is pretty special actually. So for this one then, we are going to go to a little place called Bodegraven, which is out to the east of Leiden, which you'll find about halfway between Amsterdam to the north and Den Haag to the south. Both, you know, very beautiful part of the world, incidentally, Leiden. I do recommend that you go and check it out. And for this review then, we are going to return to Brouwerij de Molen. So this particular beer is called the Hel Verdoemenis. Apologies, my Dutch pronunciations are not quite right. But yeah, this one is in English called the Hel and Damnation. I'm not sure if they have released it with the English label, actually. I'm sure they've seen them do a few of these beers with both Dutch and English on them, in fact. But yeah, this is the Bowmore barrel-aged edition of the Hel Verdoemenis, the Hel and Damnation. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So yeah, Bowmore barrel aged. Bowmore, of course, is an Islay whiskey, so it's a little bit peaty. I have had one or two Bowmore barrel aged beers before. The last one that comes to mind was the barley wine that we had from Brouwerij de Molen, which was really interesting. But you have to be very careful with Scotch barrel aging, because the Scotch barrels give, you know, the flavours you get off of these are very powerful and can be quite dominant in the beer. But I think in an Imperial Stout like this, I think this one should be really quite nice. I do wonder if the base of this beer, how the base of this beer differs from the old Rasputin that they did. That was kind of the sort of pinnacle beer, I guess you could say, from Brouwerij de Molen. But yeah, really looking forward to this one. A special thank you to my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective. One of them gave me this beer. Nobody seemed to agree on who actually donated this beer or gave me this beer in the box that they put together for me, so we'll just give them a collective thank you. But yeah, you'll find the link to the Instagram and the Facebook pages of the Dutch Beer Collective in the video description below, so do make sure you go and show them some love. All four of them are doing some lovely reviews, And that was one of the other reasons that I wanted to kind of use this beer for review number 3000, because it kind of symbolises friendship and things like that. And that's one of the big things with BeerTube is, of course, you know, making new friends, and the beer tubing, the other beer tubers are a big part of that for me. But yeah, the Hel Verdoemenis Bowmore Barrel Aged Edition 10.5% Imperial Stout from Brouwerij de Molen, the Windmill Brewery in Bodegraven in the Netherlands. Let's crack on with this review then. Review number 3000. Still mental to get my head around. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brouwerij de Molen before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. Although I do have a fairly steady supply of Dutch beers thanks to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij de Molen. So Brouwerij de Molen, or the Windmill Brewery, is a small craft brewery, distillery and restaurant found in Bodegraven in the Netherlands, just out to the east of Leiden, which is kind of halfway in between Amsterdam to the north and Den Haag to the south, in the southern part of the Netherlands. But de Molen, as I mentioned to you, translates to the mill in English, or the windmill to be more specific, and the brewery is actually located in a historic windmill called de Arktweef, which was built back in 1657. But de Molen was founded in 2004 by Menno Olivier, who started out as a home brewer, and he homebrewed for about 12 years before deciding that he wanted to turn professional and found his own company. But soon after starting up the company, he was joined by John Bruce, who was instrumental in helping the brewery grow in its early days. But in those early days, they were producing small 500-litre batches in the windmill, and they still brew some pilot batches in there from what I understand. But since 2012, the main brewery has been in another building down the street, and it first produced beer in batches of 2,500 litres. And it was around this time that they started exporting their beer a little bit. Brouwerij de Molen were, of course, the first Dutch brewery who really sent their beers abroad, actually. They were certainly the first Dutch craft brewery that I ever came across, and for a long time Dutch beer was actually very difficult to get. There are a few more breweries out there now, such as de Moerslotel and things like that, and a few others popping up, but Dutch beer is still a little bit difficult to get compared to beer from some other countries. But over time, they have progressively upgraded their equipment, and these days they're brewing 11,000 litre batches, and they produce over 10,000 hectolitres of beer per year. But since 2016, they've been in a business arrangement with Bavaria Holland, which is also known as Swinkels Family Brewers. They took a 35% share in the company, but they don't interfere in the production as far as I understand. But then in early 2019, they took full ownership, but they don't, as I say, they still continue to not interfere in the production and day-to-day operations of the brewery. It runs essentially as a separate entity from what I understand, and I think this was due to health problems with one of the original owners, but I don't know that for sure. But both Menno and John are still active in the business, and these guys continue to produce new beers. It says on Untappd that they've only produced 35 different kinds of beer, but I find that very difficult to believe, to be honest with you. I think they've probably produced a good few more than that, especially when you consider they've been around for, like 17 years or something like that. So yeah, I think the number of beers that they have listed there on Untappd is probably not right. But yeah, they do some really good stuff. Probably the classic beer from these guys would be the Rasputin Imperial Stout, which I reviewed on the channel a good few years back. I've not done that many reviews from Brouwerij de Molen actually, because we don't get so many of their beers up here in Scandinavia, of course. Even when I go across to Copenhagen, you don't see Brouwerij de Molen that much, actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Brouwerij de Molen for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can, of course, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, another thing that I will say about this brewery is that when I was visiting my friend Thomas down in the Netherlands, I'd spent a day or two in Leiden, and I had actually planned to go over to Bodegraven and have a little look at the De Molen Cafe, but unfortunately due to COVID restrictions I wasn't able to do that. But my friend Herben, he lives very close to the De Molen Cafe, so I'll need to hit that up with him and film an out and about video there. I think that would be a really cool thing to do with him at some point, so keep your eyes peeled for that video at some point. I will try and visit the Netherlands again at some point, potentially next year. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can tell you about Brouwerij de Molen. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at this beer then. I have to say, I'm very, very curious about this one. So as you can see, it's got the old classic artwork that we used to have from Brouwerij de Molen, and there you can see the Brouwerij de Molen windmill there, the Arcdrief. Probably pronouncing that wrong, and if I am, I do apologise. But there you can see just kind of plain bottle cap, but you can kind of see the windmill through the wax there. I can see that showing up on the viewfinder of the camera. But it tells you a little bit about the beer on the start here as well. So the malts that are in this one are Pilsner, Caramel, Chocolate, Roasted and Brown malts, and then the hop sorts are Sats and Columbus. But yeah, it says it's 10.5% ABV, 24 degrees Plato, EBC is 297, 102 EBUs. So I'm not sure, is EBU the same as IBU? Don't know. But yeah, this one, as we say, Hel Verdoemenis, the Hell and Damnation, an extra strong beer. Yeah, very cool. The Bowmore Barrel Aged Edition. As we said earlier, Bowmore is one of the Islay distilleries back in the motherland of Scotland. So a nice smoky whiskey. Let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. And again, thank you to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective for providing me with this beer. This is an awesome one to be able to review for number 3000, because you won't find this beer anywhere anymore. So this is very special. So there we go, a 10.5% Bowmore Barrel Aged Imperial Stout. Just sugar up the last little bit. There's no sediment in the bottom of the bottle actually, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you can see how thick this thing is, look at that. And there's no, I'm just looking at the bottom of the glass, there is no sediment, there's no sediment that's floated down that. I can see one or two little bits kind of floating around in the bottom, or just kind of sticking to the side of the bottle there. But when the beer is, probably it says on the back here, it was bottled on the 28th of May 2018. So this beer is a little bit over 3 years old. You would expect a little bit of sediment to it, but yeah, it's been cellared quite nicely. So yeah, this one I think should be pretty awesome. But as you can see, and as you would expect, it's got the right colours, we can say, for an Imperial Stout. So before the head disappears, we can see that this beer's poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head. That's faded away to be quite a thin foamy layer, but there's a nice ring around the edge of the glass. The foamy layer, it's got just a nice kind of thin foamy wispy layer sitting on top of it. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. I mean, overall it looks very nice. In terms of colour, we're certainly talking a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If we shine the light through it, it's got a wee bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max coloured edge to it, if you like. But yeah, certainly nothing other than you would expect from a big Imperial Stout. Remember, the colour of your beer is determined by 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. I'm not sure exactly what kind of what length of wort boil we'll be expecting out of this one. We'll be able to tell, I guess, from the mouthfeel a little bit, although this is barrel aged, so it might be a bit harder. But any barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, can play a role in determining the colour of your beer, but those factors are a bit more prominent when it comes to sour beers. But nothing out of the ordinary with this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is, but I think it's about time that we take a look at the aroma of this one then. So let's get stuck into this. Really curious. Oh, yeah. Now, there's two things that you can smell right away with this beer. So this is a proper old school kind of Russian Imperial Stout, this one. I think this is one of these more roasty, toasty, old school Russian Imperial Stouts, and I've missed these. You know, these days in 2021, it's all about the big kind of pastry stouts and stuff, and yeah, those are nice, but you know, I've enjoyed having the old school Russian Imperial Stouts again. I had a good few actually from Finland in the Riku beers. I had some really nice old school Russian Imperial Stouts, so I think I'm going to enjoy this one as well. We actually had quite a few Scotch whisky barrel aged ones from Finland, oddly enough, as well. The Finns love their big smoky characters, so you know, they drink all these saties and stuff like that, so that makes sense. But yeah, Scotch barrel aging seems to be fairly popular down in the Netherlands as well, actually, and I'm not sure exactly why that is, but I'm not going to complain. I do enjoy a bit of Scotch whisky barrel aging myself. But you can smell that straight away, old school Russian Imperial Stout, and you can smell the kind of power and the pungency of the Scotch whisky barrels in here. So yeah, let's try and break this one down for you then. So the backbone of the beer is absolutely, you get that nice kind of smooth, woody character out of it. Now remember, the Scotch whiskies are going to give you a more kind of grainy and slightly more harsh barrel-aged note than the American bourbon barrels are. They're going to give you a bit of smooth oak, a bit of vanilla, and a bit of kind of brown sugary sweetness. Whereas with the Scotch whisky barrels, yeah, you get a more kind of dry, woody kind of note out of them, and you can smell that with this. So you get that dry, woody base to the beer. I don't know if spicy is quite the right word, but it almost gives you a wee kind of touch of a slightly spicy note to it, but you can certainly smell the big peaty notes out of this one. So Scottish peat, it's always a bit it's like a sort of mix of earthy and grassy smoke. You can certainly smell that forming the base of this beer as well, but it doesn't come across as being too pungent actually, which is kind of interesting. Like in the two beers we had from Finland, it was really pungent, but in this one it actually seems as if it's a little bit more mellow. So maybe this beer has been aged for a slightly shorter time. It doesn't say exactly on the bottle how long it's been aged for. But yeah, maybe the other ones had been aged for like a year, maybe this is 6 months, I don't know, I'm guessing there. But yeah, the barrel aging notes in this beer come across as being a little bit more kind of subtle in a sense, which I think is great. You need to be, as I say, you need to be careful with Scotch whisky barrel aging because they give very powerful flavours compared to the bourbons, if you like, and they're not, most of them are not so sweet either. So that's another reason you have to be kind of careful with those. But I mean, sitting on top of this barrel aged component, you can certainly smell a little bit of a toasty, well fired bread crusty note in there. There's a wee bit of a kind of slightly sweeter brown bread in there. I don't know if I should maybe say like brown bread, rye bread, but it's a mix of a kind of wholemeal bread and a little bit of a kind of rye bready character. It's a very layered aroma, this, that's for sure. And the more that you smell of the beer, the more of the breadiness you start to get out of this one. The more, I think that the barrel aging sort of takes a bit more of a back seat, the more your nose adjusts to it, so that makes sense. But sitting on top of the bread, you can certainly pick out a nice wee bit of brown sugar in this one, absolutely. So you do get a bit of a sweet caramel out of this. There's maybe a tiny little hint of a treacle in this one, but I think that's kind of minimal. I do get quite a bit of it's quite a sweet caramel for me, but you also get a toasty brown sugar, and you can certainly get a little bit of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of thing out of this one. So yeah, I think this the aroma out of this one is very, very nice. The malty backbone, I think, is really well done, and the way that the barrel aging and the malty backbone fit together is really nice. Actually, it's this, I think, is a good highlight of what you can do, I guess, with Scotch whisky barrel aging, because it's not as I say, it's not too pungent, and I think it works really nicely. But it could also be the thing is perhaps the other thing that's going through my head with this beer. This one has been in the bottle 3 years. Maybe the ones I drank from Finland, and indeed the barley wine that I had from Brouwerij de Molen, maybe I drank it a bit too fresh, if you like. Maybe you need to leave the Scotch whisky barrel aged beers in the bottles a little bit to mellow them out. So again, I've not experimented too much with aging beers, if you like. So let me know about that in the comments section below. I think Danny McFadden would be an interesting one to hear about from that. So fucking drunk. He has a very extensive cellar from what I understand. So yeah, let me know about your experiences with aging bottles of Scotch whisky barrel beers. I'd be very curious to learn a little bit more about that, because this one really comes across as very nice and mellow. But anyway, let's focus on the other parts of the beer then and give it a taste. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this, which you would expect when you've got, what was it, Columbus and Sats in this one. That makes sense. So there's a wee bit of a kind of earthy note at the back of the nose. You can smell the remnants of a floral aromaticity out of the beer, and you also get a wee touch of a grassiness in there, and it's a little bit zesty at that. Sats I've always found to be a little bit of a kind of spicy noble hop. And you know, Columbus is going to give you a bit of that spice as well. So the kind of spicy notes you'll get out of this will go well with the kind of roasty, toasty backbone to the beer, and the smokiness in this case as well. But yeah, you can smell the remnants of the green component there. Remember though, it's barrel aged and it's 3 years old, so a lot of that will have dropped out. But you certainly get a nice little bit of fruitiness out of this beer as well. So I get some nice kind of raisiny notes. There's a wee bit of a juicier plum underneath, a bit of a fig. And yeah, there's also just a wee tiny hint of a slightly sharper blackberry in there. But yeah, sharper raisin, bit of plum, and a nice kind of juicy fig in this one for me. Yeah, the aroma on this one is very, very nice. So gets a big thumbs up from me, this actually. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma. Let's have a taste of this one then. So this one is the Hel Verdoemenis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, a 10.5% Bowmore barrel aged Imperial Stout from Brouwerij de Molen in Bodegraven in the Netherlands. A very fitting beer, I think, for review number 3000. So again, thank you to all of you guys for your support over the last 8 years, and I'm sure we've got another 8 years at least to go. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost. Oh yeah. That's good. That really is nice. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like I was saying, from the aroma you could pick up that this beer has a really nice balance to it. As I said, you have to be careful with Scotch barrel aging. This one finds a really, really nice balance. And it's one of these beers as well where the flavour, the aroma really translates well into the flavour, if that makes sense. The aroma really transpires into the flavour, if you can say that. It's that good English, I don't know. But yeah, this is a really old school kind of Russian Imperial Stout beer, this one. But it gets a big thumbs up from me. I like this for sure. Now, you have to remember with my reviews, when it comes to Scotch whisky barrel aging, I love peat, I love Rauch beers and things like that. So these things, some people might try this and find it really, really smoky and peaty. I don't find this one that smoky and peaty, but to be honest, if I was to die of an overdose of peat and smoke, I wouldn't care. I would be quite, I'd say that's a good way to go out, but that's just me. So be aware with this one. Some of you might find this an acquired taste. Some of you might be more attuned, I guess you could say, to the bourbon barrel aging. But for me, as a fan of the Rauch beers and the Scottish peated whiskies and stuff like this one hits the spot. So I think this is really nice, and again, very fitting for review 3000. But yeah, lovely, lovely beer, this one. Old school Russian Imperial Stout, and the Scottish smoked peaty character is nice and subtle in this one. So it's a really well crafted beer, this. Big thumbs up to Brouwerij de Molen. And I guess the other thing to note about this one is that this is from the era when Menno was still really quite involved in the brewery. Menno and John were doing everything with it. But yeah, that was another thing that was pointed out to me when the Dutch guys gave me this beer as well. But this is awesome. Let's break down the flavour for you then a little bit more succinctly, if you like. So, as we say, with this beer then, the backbone of the beer, as we could pick up from the aroma, you get that nice, smooth, woody character. That goes right across the middle of your palate with this one. Middle third and back third of your palate. That is the backbone of the beer. As we said earlier, the woody notes you'll get from a Scotch whisky barrel are a bit drier and almost slightly like a sort of grainy spice. So you get that in this beer as well. And you'll feel that the spectrum of that, the intensity of that changes as you come from the back of the palate further forward towards the front of that middle third of your tongue. And that goes really nicely. But on top of the middle third of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit of a kind of charred element to it. Then on top of the kind of slightly charred layer, you feel the kind of peaty smoke in there. So the smoky character that you get out of this one is actually a little bit dry, but you can detect within that the kind of slightly earthy and grassy notes that are, that epitomise Scottish peat. You do get a little bit of that. But yeah, I'm surprised with this one that the barrel aging note, the barrel aged notes on this one do come across as a bit charry, and that's kind of interesting. But mixed in with that feels like it's the black malt that's playing a role as well, because this one, it did say it had black malt. So just on top of that kind of woody layer, if you like, you can feel the toasty, well-fired bread crust. And then on top of that, you can feel the smoother brown bready note out of this one, which is great. It's like, it reminds me a little bit of the kind of rye breads that I used to eat when I was living in Heidelberg in Germany. I love German rye bread. Best bakeries in the world, I think, in Germany. Although I'm open to being proved wrong. But the brown bready layer in this one, it's not too thick. It's actually quite a thin brown bready layer. This is one of these beers that has a good backbone to it, but it's got lots of different kind of small layers, and I think that just works really, really well in this one. So, yeah, it's not, as I say, this is not the thickest of Imperial Stouts. And you have to remember this, with a barrel-aged beer, you're always going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours, but we'll come to that. We'll come to the mouthfeel of this one later on. Like I say, that this beer, though, is a really, it is very much, it's one of these beers, it's not the thickest, but it's got lots of little kind of micro layers, mini layers almost, that kind of build it up, and they all contribute something really nice. The one thing I'm noticing about this beer as well is that the further you go into the aftertaste, towards the front of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a little touch of a slightly leathery note coming out of this one, and maybe one or two little nutty qualities as well. But on top of that brown bready layer, that's where you get the brown sugary notes out of this beer. So yeah, in the very dead centre of your palate, you can feel a nice little bit of a sweet caramel there. But as you move further out from that, you get a nice kind of toasty. You get a little bit of a sort of more toasty brown sugary element there, and then it's perhaps just a little bit biscuity towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate. So yeah, it's really interesting how that goes together, and you will feel that this beer does show a little bit more of a kind of drier and roasty, toasty character the further you go into the aftertaste, and within that you do get a wee bit more of the kind of grassy, peaty, smoky character coming out. But I think what we've said there rounds off the middle third of the palate quite nicely in this one. Really, really nicely done, this beer. So yeah, let's focus on the other parts of it then. So back third of your palate, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, sorry. There's a little bit of bready build up there, and you can feel a really kind of intense, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character on top of that. And then into the back third of your palate, as we say, we've got the woody base, the kind of roasty, toasty layer, the kind of well-fired bread crust, and then the brown bread. So you've got all of these kind of layers sitting there, but on top of that, you can feel that slightly more airy, yeasty kind of note with this one. And it comes across as being a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. So when you start from the back, of that, the back of your palate there, you can feel the flavour is quite tall, but as you push further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit, and into the middle third of your palate, the flavours are a little bit more kind of squashed together in a sense and condensed. Like I say, not the thickest of Imperial Stouts or Russian Imperial Stouts, but that's kind of what you would expect from something that is 1, barrel aged, and 2, an old school Russian Imperial Stout. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, back corners of the palate, there's certainly a good little bit of a kind of powerful earthiness in there. Both the Sats and the Columbus are going to contribute to that, of course. But as you move further forward, you get a little touch of herbal quality, but as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, there's certainly quite a wee bit of spiciness out of this one. Columbus, of course, American hop, about 13% alpha acid. It's known for its big spicy notes. The Czech Sats, or Žatec as they call it, is it's about 5 or 6% alpha, as if I remember rightly, and compared to the other noble hops such as the Slovenian and the German ones, the Czech ones I find have always been a bit spicy. So both of these are contributing to that a little bit, and the spiciness does have a wee bit of brightness to it, I think, too. But around the front curve of the palate, you do get a bit of a lighter kind of grassiness in there. There's a wee bit of a kind of citrusy, zesty sort of thing. But yeah, this beer is 3 years old, so a lot of that has dropped out in a sense, and you can feel the sort of smoothness that would bring. But the remnants are still there, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the green component of the hops. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity notes out of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build-up in there, a nice kind of toasty, well-fired bread crust, which I certainly like. But then the base of that front third of your palate, I'd say it's a little bit kind of smoother. You can feel a little bit of a slightly more smooth, woody character to this one. And you do get a wee bit of the slightly sweeter brown bread there. But remember, the back of your palate is where you pick up the more bitter and harsh flavours, and there's a sort of transition across your palate to being more sweet, to picking up more sweeter flavours as you come further forward. So remember that's a general thing with any food or whatever that you eat. But on top of that kind of that layer that we've just described on the front third of your palate, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And again, this is quite similar to what we picked up in the aroma. But yeah, in terms of the fruity flavours then, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness to this one. Underneath that, you can feel there's almost a wee slightly kind of well-fired, or like Christmas puddingy, cakey sort of thing. You do get a wee bit of that at the back of that front third of your palate. But then you do get a wee bit of a kind of, there is a wee bit of a slightly plummy sort of thing, like a almost pruny kind of character, a bit of a dried fruity note. But as you move further forward from that, you get a more kind of figgy layer, and the figgy note, the lighter figgy note, extends into the front half of that front third of your palate, although you could debate that it's a little bit more of a kind of black curranty sort of thing. Currants are always a little bit lighter and juicy than berries, if you like, but just behind the front tip of the tongue, I think you get a wee bit more of an oily blackberry coming off this beer, and that blackberry is what lingers into the aftertaste. You'll also feel that front third of your palate getting a little bit more roasty and toasty underneath there too. But yeah, I think this is, as I say, a proper old school Russian Imperial Stout with this one, but a beautiful beer. Yeah, I think this is a really nice beer. I really am enjoying this one, but you will feel more of the smoky character comes out of this one as it opens up. So yeah, I think we can round off this. We can finish off with the tasting section there then, and round off with the mouthfeel. So let's look at this. So mouthfeel. This is certainly, as I say, not the heaviest of Imperial Stouts that you're going to come across. In fact, I would say that this one is kind of top end of mid-bodied, but it's certainly not lacking in flavour at all. You will, as I say, sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel when you do barrel aging. That's kind of an inherent thing you'll notice in a lot of barrel aged beers, but you get all these infused flavours instead. But you've got a lovely, you've just got a lovely balance to this beer. This one is, it's quite a light, quite wet, but still quite, quite roasty and toasty Imperial Stout. It's an RIS, it's a Russian Imperial Stout, so this is kind of what you expect. You expect a fairly light mouthfeel compared to the oatmeal stouts or the big pastry stouts that we get these days. But I think our perception of mouthfeel has changed because of these big pastry stouts that are going about now. But in terms of IBUs, yeah, this one is a big beast of a beer. I think this is, like 90, 100 IBUs certainly, and that's both from the malt and I think from the hoppy character a little bit, but also from the barrel aging side of things. That will contribute to it. As we said, the malt base has a toasty backbone to it, a little bit of a slightly spicy backbone. There's a bit of smoothness in there, and you do get a slight degree of sweetness to it, but the the well-fired bread and things like that, they're all kind of in sync, but the bitterness of this beer and the dryness really comes out the more that you go into the aftertaste for this one. But it's very well balanced in terms of the way those flavours come out. The sweetness, I think, there's a wee bit of that lingers there, but the sweetness, I think, takes a back seat, particularly the further you go into the aftertaste with the beer. The fruity side of the beer it's quite wet and fruity in that sense. It's got a wee bit of sharpness to it and a bit of juiciness. But I mean, overall, I think it goes together very, very nicely in that sense. So yeah, it's, as I say, top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation, I think, is very, very smooth on this one, and it feels very clean actually. But yeah, it's certainly one of the it's quite a dry and bitter Imperial Stout, this one, but I really like how this goes together. They've managed the Scotch whisky barrel aging very well on this one, and that's a difficult thing to do, I think, so respect to Brouwerij de Molen for this one. But I think that is a good point to finish off with this review. This has been an awesome beer to review, especially for number 3000. So yeah, I'll be keeping a hold of this bottle, I think, definitely. I always keep my milestone bottles. But yeah, this one was the Hel Verdoemenis, the Hel and Damnation. 10%, 10.5% Russian Imperial Stout. This one aged in Bowmore whisky barrels from Islay in Scotland. Beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. A big thank you to my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective for making this review possible as well, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. So yeah, that is review number 3000. I'm sure there's another 3000 to come in the channel over the years. How quickly they'll come, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I hope that you guys continue to enjoy the videos, and a huge thank you for all your support over the years. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brouwerij de Molen. And as I say, let me know a little bit more about your experience with Scotch whisky barrel aging. Scotch whisky barrel aged beers, especially if they mellow out a little bit more when they're in bottle. If you age the bottles a little bit more, I would be very, very curious about that. But thank you for watching. As I say, check out my social media, check out Brouwerij de Molen's social media, and we'll leave it there. Review number 3000, 8 years in, absolutely mental. Slange, skull, cheers, and prost.